It isn't Julianne Hooper.
Yes, it is.
Well, I can't believe it. You're all grown up. Well, how come we never see you anymore?
Well, I guess you don't need me anymore.
Well, of course we need you, Julie. We're always looking for a babysitter.
Oh, Mr. Merrill.
Welcome back to Kino Summer Series. We're back again with a hot summer movie, 2024. If you tuned in last week for Dog Day Afternoon, thanks for tuning in. I hope that's going well, despite what Warner Bros. Did to me personally.
You hear that, Zaslav? You can't keep us down. You can't do it.
No, yeah, I just, of all
Zaslav,
movies,
dude, Zaslav sounds like a villain's name.
yeah,
It sounds like some like Soviet or German guy, like Manchurian candidate, sort of like Bond villain. I could totally see a Bond villain being named Zaslav. Could you not?
yeah, totally.
Some dude with like two glass eyes, but he thinks he knows how movies work, like that sort of thing. That's how I view Zaslav
like
name origin. I'm looking that up.
So we had
Jewish from Ukraine, so we're big Putin fans here on the harbor.
Oh yeah,
so
you know it here first.
Mess with Zaslav. Okay, that bit's over. What's up, guys?
This week, hopefully, we're doing a movie that won't just get immediately blocked on all platforms just for having clips.
You know how lucrative The Swimmer from 1968 is with Burt Lancaster?
The Swimmer from 1968 by what's his name?
Starring Burt Lancaster.
Yeah, Burt Lancaster
and
with
Joan
Frank
Rivers.
Perry, that's it, Frank Perry, with it written by his wife Eleanor Perry, which I find interesting.
I always find wife and like husband and wife creative duos interesting because I couldn't do it. I understand if you're like Tim Burton, you're like, all right, Helen, I'll put you in this one. Like you kind of gotta or Mila Jovovich or whatever her name is. Like she has to be put in movies by her husband. It's like, all right, let me write you a part. But dude, my parents worked at an office together, and I'm like, how do you do that? This is why I'm single though, because I'm like, oh, how can you spend so much time with a member of the opposite sex?
That's totally normal to not want to work your job with your wife, I think.
Yeah, dude, because then how am I supposed to flirt with the secretary?
Got him.
That's the kind of movie this is, though.
This movie appealed to me when I was trying to find, because we've done a lot of Kino's summer series movies by now. So I was really trying to find some off the beaten path that like they have that summer atmosphere, and this intrigued me, just the concept of like this guy is going to swim his way back to his house via pools in the neighborhood. And I was like, okay, that sounds kind of interesting. But thankfully, this takes that concept and just expands on it in a way that I was hoping for, in like a really interesting way. Just a complete kind of study of this guy, of his so-called, it's really the so-called 60s perfect Americana, American dream kind of society, completely broken down for this guy, but he's in denial. It's like running away from your problems, the movie.
Yeah, pretty much character study on Burt Lancaster going through the midlife crisis to end all midlife crises. I'm guessing. His life is falling apart. Spoilers. And you get that increasingly through the movie. It is a movie you have to be patient because it's, halfway through the movie you start to piece together that this guy's life is falling apart. I mean, you get some of it, but
you get hints pretty immediately.
You get hints pretty early, but the scale of it,
just
increases. You're like, okay, is this guy just disillusioned in his marriage? And then you're like, oh wait, is he even married? Is his wife alive? Or they separate? It keeps I never thought she was dead, and this is a John Cheevery movie. John Cheever was the writer of the short story, the New Yorker short story for this. If you think of a New Yorker short story, it's John, like that's John Cheever. He set the template. Not that he was the first guy doing it, but I had to read John Cheever when I took my classes for my stupid creative writing degree, which is why I'm such an expert on having a film podcast. But John Cheever's the post-war Americana short story writer. Say what you will about his plots, his language is beautiful. He's able to inject, beautiful language while still keeping the readability high. It doesn't get too flowery. Every once in a while, he'll use a word, and you're like, "Whoa, that's new." But he has a lot of stuff about suburban life and the suburban explosion, especially on the East Coast, that happened in the post-war period. And I was actually surprised the swimmer, the short story, only published a few years before. But this was back in an era in American short fiction where basically people still subscribed to magazines, and The Atlantic, I believe, still had fiction in it versus I think it has like a once a month fiction view. Once a year fiction issue nowadays. And short story authors still had a hold on the culture, because how many contemporary short story authors can you name now?
Yeah.
That are known for short stories. Not like, oh, Stephen King published a book of short stories. Not a lot unless you're just into the form. Which I do love short stories. I think they're underrated, and I think they're good for today's attention spans. If you don't want to commit to a whole novel, that's honestly one reason I read them. Also, sometimes I don't like getting 50 pages into a novel and being like, okay, I'm not into this, and I just spent like an hour reading this before finding out I'm not into it.
Yeah.
But that is the context in which all of this is birthed. John Cheever, sometimes he has some magical realism. He has a famous story about a radio that can eavesdrop on neighbors. It's all about this waspy shit. This is a waspy movie. We've covered some waspy movies on this before, and this is waspy even by some of the other movies.
Yeah, it's fucking. This is greatest generation fantasy movie.
These are the people in The Graduate telling the kid to get into plastics. That's what this is. I'm surprised. Yeah. And plastic gets brought up in this movie. The guy's like, look at this pool covering. It's made of steel and plastic. That newfangled, plastics.
Innovations were happening every other second in every field.
Dude, now we have innovations to deep fake porn with Hillary Clinton's face on it.
Oh.
It's gone so wrong. I mean,
but it's just I like a good kind of a lifestyle porn hangout kind of movie, and I thought maybe that's partially what was going on, but from the setup I was like, okay, there's actually something under the surface here that makes it more interesting.
It's a weird idea. He's so this is the most swimmingest guy ever. I've never met a guy this into swimming, and I've met you, and you're the most swimmingest guy I know.
Yeah,
you grew up at a neighborhood pool that your parents or that your grandparents owned.
His brain is completely broken.
No, you can tell from the beginning. He's like, get in the pool with me, which I actually do sympathize with. I'm always annoyed when I go to the beach and everybody just wants to sit on the beach. I'm like, what? You can sit anywhere. Wait, go swim a bit, at least a little.
Yeah, well, it's also you go swim, you get tired, you sit on the beach, listen to the waves, eat, relax, and then repeat. I can't stand people that just want to sit on the sand
and read a magazine. It's why did we drive 8 hours for this?
Well, I get wanting to just listen to the waves, but it's usually pretty packed anyway. But this is just the prime example of I don't know. I sympathize in a way. Not that I'm middle-aged and have kids and my life has completely fallen apart at later middle age, but
no, my life has fallen apart without kids as a single man.
I've had moments in my life where it's a very specific time in my life where things are kind of out of control in a way, but I'm kind of just taking the time to just escape from it, even though it's already happening. I don't know. We've all been in different situations like
but
that.
I don't have a bunch of rich friends, so I just play video games. So
yeah, exactly.
I don't go bum all these pools.
But it kind of reminds me, and he's pretty childish in this movie in a lot of ways. But
he's the most childish character in this movie.
Yeah.
Even though there's an actual child. we'll get.
It reminds me of when I kind of freaked out and didn't know what I felt like I didn't know what I was doing, and when I was 19 and 20, I was living at my grandparents' and just like hang out with friends after they get done with college, go ride around, chill, smoke weed, swim, just do whatever instead of addressing the things in my life that I should try and figure out now while I was young. Instead, I was just like, I'm just going to enjoy myself now. I'm too freaked out about my own future and my own life and stuff, too depressed, stuff like that. It was like and I cherish the times I had with my friends at that time, but there was that underlying feeling of like I need to figure some stuff out. So
Yeah, it's all highs and lows. I was there. I remember it.
yeah.
And it's this guy. I mean, he just needs a shrink, but I don't know if he can afford one. Is the thing. Burt Lancaster is good in this. He is a bit older, and I think some people, some critics at the time, contemporary critics, were a bit like, well, is Burt Lancaster the right guy for this? But he still has still great shape.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of fat people in this movie. I'm like, wow, this movie today there'd be a lot less eye candy. I mean, they would just cast hot people. That's what they do. But it's like, have you ever seen those pictures like comparing the beach today versus a photo of the beach in the 60s? And it's just like, okay, there's half the people and twice the weight in this modern photo.
That's just the truth. Yeah. It's nothing.
Yeah, there's a scene in this where he's like, yeah, I'll have a Coke. And then he has 2 sips and then leaves. I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
Finish your Coke.
Yeah, we're Coke fiends here. I already almost finished mine. We're not even halfway through the podcast.
Yeah, no, it's just like, well, I think he was fine for it. Felt like everybody he interacted with was in at least like their late 50s, mostly. Like, just they all had kids or older or adult kids, or I don't know.
They weren't quite grandparents, but they had kids who were grown, going into college, just graduating high school.
It's different in the 60s, but now people in their 50s are content creators.
Yeah. They have
but just like I felt like that was a perfect age. Like you're over the hill now officially, and you just over and enough over the hill to where you definitely could be having a freak out. But I just like that there's this. It's done in a way where there's this very slight surrealist, dreamlike quality to it, to where you kind of get captured into his kind of headspace a bit, especially the first half when he's just wandering around and everything's cool and he's just kind of coasting along, kind of like I don't know, just like kind of like a stoner, like the dude, just like
he is a little dude like.
Yeah.
He's incredibly idealistic, and a lot of people make comments to him of like, has he had to work for things? Has he had things handed to him his whole life? Or did he just marry a rich woman and that was it? Because it seems like she was the gatekeeper of most of the money. Although he did have a career behind him, which we don't learn exactly what it is. It was business. He was a businessman we hear from one conversation that he got ousted from the company, essentially, or some younger guy took his position, something like that.
Yeah, and I like that it's fake. I really do. And
because he's trying to block it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Some drunk guy, the guy at the party who's like, it's a good drunk performance because it's very subtle, but you can tell it's a very much like, okay, guys had a few cocktails around a swimming pool party.
It's so easy for people to overact when they're trying to play drunk and like overdo their hands and they go, I don't know. You have to do it just right.
No, and maybe the guy just had a couple cocktails and then didn't.
I just love like the whole execution of the film. It feels like a classic, like almost like a hero's journey quest, but set in like the landscape of 60s mid-century suburbia.
No, I was thinking it's very much, hell, dude, it's the Odyssey. He's trying to get home.
Yeah.
He's trying to get home. That's what it is,
Like, that's so cool to me.
Or he's trying to get home to his wife. That is the Odyssey.
It somehow just feels ahead of its time with its execution, though. I feel like it could have
Well,
been.
you mentioned the surrealist elements.
Yeah.
And that really adds to it. Because you get all these shots, these wide shots of up in the trees, and I mean literally camera up in the trees,
Yeah.
or on a crane or whatever. But looking down, we can't even see him or the other actors in all parts of the shot because they might be obscured by branches and such. Um, and the way it captures that natural lighting is just this. It's all golden. It's like it's Elysian. It's like the
Yeah.
Elysian fields, you know. He's in this dream state, away from civilization, away from people, because the man romanticizes his own solitude, which I think a lot of men still do, is sort of this toxic masculinity thing, but especially men of that generation, because they didn't know how to deal with stuff. They didn't know how to talk about their feelings. There's one throwaway line with when he sees the actress, which is probably my favorite scene of the movie. Melodramatic, yes, but this is a melodrama at a lot of points. Where she says, you know, I was bored. I was acting. You were a scene partner, which is devastating when she's talking about his, you know,
Yeah.
bedroom life. It's like, oh man. The woman who was like, I faked every orgasm. It's like that joke in Naked Gun. She tells Leslie Nielsen, I faked every orgasm. He's like, so did I. But the you know, and she mentions your boring stories about your wife and the war and all these other things. And I think why it's not a real psychological phenomenon, but like the idea of a midlife crisis is part of it's like A, in your midlife, you finally have money to do the things you want to do. But B, I think a lot of it is just there's an entire generation of men that didn't have, I mean, they had childhoods, but it was cut short, you know? They didn't have that time, like you were saying, 19 or 20. Imagine you had to be sent to the war, you know? Imagine you were Ukrainian and you're like, I'm depressed at my grandparents that are like, oh, great. Well, here's a shovel, dig a trench.
Yeah.
So, you know, whatever he was doing in the war, he and his generation, and everybody has moved on in their own ways, clearly, but he just it's, you know, I don't think that sort of PTSD is the cause of all this. I think it's a factor into it. Um, but it's also, I think if you have your innocence robbed, he's constantly trying to regain this innocence, which is generational. You even have it like, I think in our generation with millennials, you have it with, well, there's a lot of people who, you know, I'm 30. By this time, I thought I might be a homeowner. You know, if you'd asked me when I was 10 or whatever. But that's just, I said earlier, I have a creative writing degree. So,
Yeah. And even if you had some crazy job, like it's literally the worst time in a long time to buy a house in
oh, it's
America.
crazy.
So,
It's absolutely insane, even in the past few years, even if I had gone in like 2018.
yeah, it's so
Um,
crazy how we imagine ourselves at 30 when we were 10 years old.
yeah, well, and also now I realize I kind of don't want that. In a weird, in a
Yeah.
not a great way, I identify with Burt Lancaster. I'm like, well, he's kind of not wrong, but the problem is being untethered is freedom, but also you have no foundation. There's a balance there.
Sure.
You know, I've met people who are explorers, as he said, who have that hashtag wanderlust about them, but
Yeah.
they have no roots, and so they can't suck up any nutrients, and they become like this kind of husk floating in the wind. This is getting a little gay, so I'm gonna stop. But you know what I mean.
It's a good point. No, it's a good point. But you just see, it's interesting how a lot of people are glad to see him because obviously he's been down and out for a while
He's
at
been
this
in the
point.
city. I feel that's what they're
Yeah,
saying.
exactly.
But
Yeah,
and it's been a couple years at
but
least.
it's like, so it differs how each house feels about him, but like there's this constant of like everyone kind of feels sour towards his wife in one way or another, which is that sucks. And maybe he and you it becomes clear when he talks to his old flame that like he married it to her just for money, for the lifestyle, and he wasn't actually happy. And then he I don't know. It's just like it's all too late, man. You have to accept it. Like, well, you know, if you get divorced, then what do you have? I doubt he's divorced. I think he's hanging on. I think she keeps him around because it's, it's how it is back then. I don't think they're divorced.
Yeah, who knows?
Otherwise, they wouldn't have left the house, I don't think.
Yeah, maybe they're separated. But so in the short story, it says like they lost money in a bad business deal,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they didn't have a lot of other assets. Like they only had income. They didn't have a lot of, other than their house, they didn't have other assets. Um, and but that may not be the case in this version of the story. Well, I mean, you mentioned his old flame. The first scene where we really get the sense that something's not right. It's a little at the beginning. You're like, all right. The first scene, for example, you're like, this guy's weird. He's
Yeah, first of all, how does he even like get up to their house like in the first place? Like it just shows him already going towards their house. It's like, where did he start from? How did he
It is. Did he ride the train from the city in his swimming trunks? Because we see a lot of the outline of Burt Lancaster's dong. So was he just like hanging dong on the train and then got off and
Yeah, is
just
he
walked
like
up? Because he must have hobbit feet. I wrote that in my notes. Like he must have hobbit feet. And they
yeah.
finally get to a scene where he washes his feet and they look disgusting. And he uses that public soap and he's rubbing it on his feet. I'm like, dude, this is how we got mad cow disease. Like
That's
this is
gnarly,
not.
yeah.
Yeah,
He's almost in like a fugue state or something at the beginning, just like.
he's in a fugue state almost through this whole movie. But what
But
I'm saying is the first scene where we really see something is wrong and it's explicitly said is when he meets a girl who used to babysit for him. And she's 20 now, so I'm gonna assume she was like 16 or so when she was
I
babysitting.
think she was younger. I
Might
think
have been
she was
younger though.
14.
16's optimistic. It might be 14.
I just think because he's so far gone at points in this movie that he still thinks his girls are young enough to play with that boy that he runs into. And that boy's like 8, 9 years old. And clearly they've grown up to a point where like they've been playing tennis and now they're older and stuff. Like
They can drive, they can get
yeah,
DUIs.
like they talk about his girls, his daughters, like, yeah, exactly. They're old enough to drive. So like he's pretty far gone. So if the last time the kids were young enough to need to be babysat, I would say at the most, I mean, I don't know, it depends on the parent, but like 10, 11 years old is probably the oldest you'd be.
Yeah, so she could have been like
She was probably 15,
something like that. I don't
something like
know.
that.
It's weird.
But before that, actually, okay. So they go to the very first house. Everyone's happy to see him. That's when he comes up with the plan. It's like, okay, these guys, oh, cool. This is like lifestyle porn. He's just it's a fun time in this crazy little suburbia in the 60s. Okay. And then they and then at the second house, he mentioned that he wanted his daughters to be married at his home. And that's when they started feeling weird about it. And I was like, okay, something's weird. Cause like, they're like, what do you mean at your home? Like, what are you talking about? Your home. That's like the initial something's
yeah,
off.
because they talk about the resale value of his house.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
where I forgot about that part.
And
You're
then the
right.
third house, it's a straight up bust. It's that lady who's like, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. Her son like has passed or something. And he's like, it's been so long that he wasn't even aware that this guy I think is like dead or something. And she's like,
Right.
get out of here.
Because it's
Like, oh
all
shit.
this oh god, all this movie's so white. It's all this waspy stuff of not just keeping up with the Joneses. I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, I kind of want to know my neighbors, but also at the same time, I'm like, I don't. If I'm not really going to know you, do I need to invest the effort? And it's just meeting at these cocktail parties and keeping up appearances. It's an analog way of keeping up with people. I know that's a crazy thing to say, but I
It
think
depends. I feel like if we lived in a very specific area in a cool ass city, that I would want to know my neighbors, that it could be
well,
worth
also the difference is you and I are renting,
it. Yeah.
versus living because again, not homeowners.
Yeah.
You know your neighbor. I don't really know my neighbors.
Yeah, but it's like he's far. Yeah. And then the fourth house he gets to is when he finds his old babysitter, like pulls her up out of the pool. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on here?
Here's the thing. There's, especially of this generation, there's a lot of, older men dating younger women, and with all the male gaze that's in filmmaking. And it even comes down to casting. It's always, the male lead is 15, 20 years older than the female lead, and they're allegedly the same age, stuff like that. It's I don't know why this example always pops in my head, but in Yes Man with Jim Carrey, a movie I haven't even seen all of. I've seen parts of it on TV. It's okay. It's fine. It's whatever. It's not the best Jim Carrey movie. It's not bad. It's not offensively bad. But anyway, he's dating like Zoe Deschanel, who's like 20 years younger than him, in that movie. And like he visibly has like aging, like weathered lines on his face.
Yeah.
This is Zoe at the height of her career. Like right
That is
after
kind of
her
strange.
days, just stuff like that. So that's why I was worried, like, okay, how long is this female character, this Pollyanna, gonna
He's known
stay with him?
her for far too long to be trying to talk to her. Well, first of all, he's like 58, probably 60 years old. He shouldn't be talking to 20-year-olds. Just that's fucking crazy. But to have her grow up and know her.
Are you Leonardo DiCaprio?
Well, yeah, it is funny though that lady, I can't remember the actress's name, but she's in Mission Impossible 7 and she's 40. And someone was really getting pissed off that they would put her in a relationship with Tom Cruise's character, which he's in his 60s. And it's like, but then someone retweeted it, was like, she's only 40 years old, you sick fuck. I don't know. But
no, well, I mean, the thing is with Tom Cruise, he's had so much work done and they light and make up him so perfectly that he looks 40. He could pass his 40 easily.
Late 40s.
So it's Ethan Hunt is not 60.
Yeah.
It is one of those things. When you saw Top Gun Maverick in theaters, did you have Tom Cruise on screen before the movie start? Like, thank you for seeing this movie. He looked way older. It was weird. I know it took a long time to film that movie and release it, but it's amazing how much magic Hollywood can do just with perfect lighting and makeup and adrenochrome or whatever they use. I don't know. Getting his Thetan levels low.
No.
Looked like he had too many Thetans.
We don't support alt-right conspiracies, QAnon conspiracies on this cast.
We also don't support Scientology. I'm sorry. I want a career in show business. Scientology's okay.
It's perfect that the babysitter, because she's 20, immediately romanticizes his idea of swimming home pool to pool, and she's down to go with him. It makes sense.
Yeah, she's like, oh, that's neat. You're an explorer.
It makes it sound like a real adventure.
# wanderlust.
And I was like, oh man, he's hanging out with this 20-year-old girl. Like, obviously he's trying to recapture his youth. That's obvious. But like, I was wondering if he was just in this like infantilized kind of state of mind that it would be kind of like a
regression.
I'm saying like him going with this girl, bringing her along, wouldn't be like problematic in a way that it actually does become, because of course it does. I was thinking like, oh, maybe he's going to be so kind of childlike with his want to just do this kind of explore adventure wanderlust thing. But of course he does get delusional.
You're saying that he's so childlike and so focused on the goal of swimming that he wouldn't be interested in. Okay.
And then of course after some time he starts peak delusion, like saying like he can start driving her to work and stuff like that, and like even tries to make a move. And of course if it would have dove into his fantasy, she would have like made out with him, probably had sex with him right there in the grass, because that's the fantasy. But she, of course, is like, fuck this, and like runs off.
Right. And this is not a victim blaming thing, which is a great way to start a sentence, but it's, she's a 20-year-old kid, essentially, secretary, thinking of moving to the city with friends once they get raises. Remember raises? But she starts admitting she had this crush on him, which is also a silly thing to do. It's like, oh, you're opening a door, but you're too young and dumb and not full of cum that you don't realize that you're opening this door. You think you're just talking. And
Yeah.
it's some creepy shit. And she's like, yeah, I took your shirt and wore it. I would be, dude, I don't know if a chick told me that, not a younger chick. I'm saying if a chick my age was like, I smelled your shaving cream and took your shirt home and wore it, I would be like, you're going to kill me, but also this will be the best sex of my life. So I'm
No.
very you know me, you
He
know
was
my
probably
ex. I'm into
13
crazy
years
chicks.
old, had a crazy infatuation with him, and took his shirt because she wanted to like hold it, smell it, pretend she
Right.
was like,
It's the
that's
Christian Grey thing. It's like women fantasize about older men. I'm speaking very broadly here. Women fantasize about older men that can provide and take care of them, and men want to breed. It's,
which is very 60s.
it's very 60s.
But
Um,
yeah, it's like yeah. It does add to it though that we do get those moments of them running in the sun and like jumping over that horse thing, whatever those things that horses jump over and like
yeah.
stuff like that. I don't know. But I do like that he actually stumbles and hurts himself and then he's got this very very light limp for the rest of the journey, which makes it which starts packing on, you know. That's the real start. It's like he gets that limp and then she runs off. And those are two things that start to kind of break down the illusion a bit of what's going on. And it's like right after that,
No,
he,
it's well, yeah, he tries to walk it off, but again, that's just another example of him not acknowledging his own age.
yeah,
Yeah, because people don't you don't bounce back as much. Because that's something my dad has talked to me about with his age. Like it's not just that he's like tired more or gets hurt more easily, and that's true. But it's a lot of it's just he can't bounce back from stuff. When he's hurt, he's hurt. You know,
yeah.
and I feel it now. It's coming. I need
But
actors.
he takes her to that party, the fifth house, which is that party that's going on. And they get champagne and stuff, and a lot of people. That's where a lot of people are like, "Wow, we haven't seen you in forever," and of course, we get to see one of the two black men in this movie. Both of the black men in this movie are servants in one way or another to the
Right.
white people, which is interesting.
And no, it's accurate and it's intentional. It's very intentional.
I know.
There's even some racial dialogue later when he meets the chauffeur. We'll get to
Yeah.
that. It's a very scene by scene movie. We have to talk about it.
Yeah. But
Um,
that's where we get the sense we learn that something clearly has happened with his job. And then the one lady that invites him over for dinner, she's nice, and then immediately he mentions his wife and she gets like passive aggressive. It's like, okay, what's up with his wife?
right. Like what are you talking about? Because she's probably just like, why are you still pining after that guy? I'm trying to be your rebound. I'm throwing myself at you because you're Burt Lancaster and you ain't doing nothing.
Oh
It
yeah.
is. I will say some of the hairdos in this, I'm like, wow, these are grandma hairdos, but these people are like some of these people are like 40. It's
Yeah,
unnatural.
they just but then like they just kept that hairstyle for like the rest of their lives, so it became
Yeah,
like an 80, 90-year-old woman stereotype.
exactly. They didn't modernize.
Yeah.
That's why they're like, your hair looks nice and stuff. I'm like,
Yeah,
you look
dude.
like gotta smell like rock candy.
Yeah. It's like and now like all grandmas like still dress like it's the early 90s. I'm like, dude, Jesus. I don't know. But
Yeah, dude. Where's the? We need more gilfs. Where's the hot grandmas at? I'm trying to find that. I'm trying to get a sugar mama. The only way I'm gonna get a house is date an old lady, then kill her.
Jesus, dude. Okay.
That's my plan. That's it.
There was one part of this movie where like he's talking to the 20-year-old babysitter and he's like, well, how did you and your boyfriend meet? Because she's like, oh, he's jealous, he'll beat you up or whatever. And she says they met via the computer. And I was just watching it. It took my brain like 5 seconds to register. There was like a delay, and I was like, "Wait, what does she mean? A computer? It's the fucking '60s."
And even he's like computer, but it's one of
Yeah,
those.
it's just
I'm
so
I
funny to me.
almost
Like,
it's I
I'm
know
so
it's not
used to like,
this,
oh
but
yeah, that just registers. Like,
part of it, I was thinking like, what if he's never heard of a computer before? He had, but what if he's like, what's a computer?
it's just so funny how like my brain like did like this double take of like, what are you talking about? And she immediately explains. Like they filled out these questionnaires.
It's Tinder.
Yeah, I know, but I was like, that's so cool that like they were doing that in the '60s. It's probably bullshit, but like,
I was bullshit. I was like, why do you need a computer for this? It seems like you just can find a matchmaking service. I don't know
it
what
probably is
numbers
like you fill out this questionnaire and then we send it off to the computer, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And then because it sounds high tech, call this number or something, or
But it's really just
this.
like, oh, you like tennis? This guy likes tennis. Let's put
Some guy in some like cheap like office building.
polyester suit, sweating, boxes of files all around. He's
Yeah,
like
has all of these like people that have submitted
crooked tie.
letters to him.
Just like, okay, you like okay, you're Methodist. Okay.
There we go. Y'all are 99% match. Like that's back then.
Put
That
a
would have
graph
been a
on there
good
for no
scam.
reason. It's in like Crayola.
Yeah, that would be such a good scam back then. But I don't know. It was just
Hey, they got together. It's not a scam if it works.
Yeah. But
she's like, oh man, he's so jealous. Now let me hang out with this older dude and walk alone in the woods with him. Hey,
I wouldn't
she would rather hang out with a man in the woods than a bear. That's old. That's dated.
Not getting into that one.
It's like 2 months old.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
We're on to Hot Tua now.
Oh yeah, great. Pure millennial fodder.
It's been a bad time for memes.
Yeah, it's pretty horrible. And then
it's been a bad time. It's the apocalypse. It's coming, guys.
Yeah, we gotta get back to Harambe, dude. Everything goes back to Harambe.
Everything goes back to Harambe, I guess. Oh, Harambe messed up the timeline. That was 8 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. 2016. Yeah, it was. Yeah. So he gets to the sixth house, which is where we get the other black man in the movie who drives for the rich family. And like, you're like, oh, I like the detail that he's like, oh no, you don't have to get out. And he just gets in and then immediately just starts with the underlying just accidental 60s suburban racism. It's just like, okay.
Yeah, because he starts talking about the other chauffeur immediately. And did he say something about him butchering the English language? Did he say that?
Something like that. Yeah.
And he talks about how good of a singer he was, though, which is talking about, like, I don't know, baritone voices. And then the chauffeur says, yeah, did he have a natural sense of rhythm? He says that to Burt. And Ed is just like, here, let me finish this Mad Libs for you. Black
But this house is interesting because it's two old nudists and they seem like the richest people that he runs into while he's out, because the old lady who's there, the older guy's like, oh, he probably is asking for money, that's why he showed up, we can help him out, he's a friend. And she's like, well, friends aren't deductible. And it just, to me, that totally exemplifies just like that generation, silent generation, and boomers, that like they had their great fun in America and then left nothing. They left scraps for us.
Yeah, it definitely,
that whole movie, it kind of like made me pissed off about that.
Also, by the way, like, people say that, but also magically, like, if our generation, you take the same people, the same bodies and souls, and they happen to be born in 1950, they would have done the same thing. I mean, it's not like there aren't greedy millennials. We have Zuckerberg. Like, I don't know. It's we have our own billionaire class.
I know, but it's just like,
this is, I mean, I'm not an apologist for boomers and their, fucking of the economy.
Not just boomers.
Yeah.
Boomers' parents.
And boomers' parents, yes. That is a good line, though. Friends aren't deductible. That's pretty true. Also,
Yeah.
I don't blame him because this is not the first time the guy's been around, is the thing. Like, this is, he hasn't been around in a while, but I feel like even a couple years ago, they were having money troubles and having to ask people for money
Yeah.
or that are in debts. He
Yeah.
still has debts.
But
So
it's
this
like
is not a first time for him.
this is when it's like cemented that shit's he has no money because he tries to put himself down for $1,000 for a benefit they're doing, and they like get kind of irritated. Like, what are you talking about, dude? Like,
Yeah, which
she
is
like,
insane. I mean, that's like $9,000-$10,000 today. It's an
yeah,
insane amount of. I mean,
it's full
it's
delusion.
oh no, and it's one of those like I don't know. Whenever rich people have these fundraisers, I'm sure some of these benefits are great, and then some of them are like what's her name from Arrested Development, where she's just doing bullshit causes to
Yeah,
schmooze with rich people, and then I feel like some of them isn't there like Live Aid or one of those where it's like oh or any of these things where like we're gonna have a concert with a bunch of celebrities to like raise money for the environment, and they all fly here on private jets. This is that sort of thing.
yeah. The best joke though in Arrested Development is when she's doing the fundraiser and it's down to the wire and they still haven't even figured out what the fundraiser's for, and she just says to be announced, but then it just says it's for TBA and everyone's like thinks like TBA is this real thing that they're
Yeah,
raising money for.
it's a disease. It's tuberculosis advanced. That's what it is.
So funny. But I think the seventh house is might be the most interesting to me
Is that the actress?
because that's when he talks to the kid, and
No,
the
that's
kid
cute.
even talks, which is like like a boomer kid talks about how his mom's on a honeymoon and his dad's in love with the manicurist and all this stuff, and he's just there with the housekeeper and stuff, and it's
I feel not too terrible because sometimes they grow up to be Donald Trump Jr., but I almost feel bad for like rich kids who like you showed me that nanny service that will take your kids to Disney World for you,
oh,
and it's just the saddest thing of trying
that's
to
sick.
buy your love, not sharing the memories, just
Yeah, because there's like Disneyland dads who get divorced and like buy their kids love by taking them to Disneyland themselves. But to make it a step further from
oh
that and
yeah,
pay someone else to do it
yeah.
is insane.
It's pretty gross. And I feel like that's how this boy is. But and also he's too neurotic. He can't even swim. He's afraid of water.
That's such a great capture of the 60s America just from
Yeah.
these interactions. I
How much
love it a
lemonade
lot.
did he sell? Was there a lot of traffic on that road? Doesn't seem. And also, do you think Ned paid him back the 10 cents? I don't think he did. I think he doesn't even pay that back.
No,
I
I
don't
don't.
think he has 10 cents.
Yeah, because he's talking to him like, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. You come to our house and we'll teach you to ice skate. You can play with my daughters, all this
Ride your
like
bike.
stuff. And like,
Ridiculous. And the
but
kid's just like, I'm a fledgling capitalist and I need you to help me out.
I just find it fascinating that like there's the revelation that their pool isn't even filled up. And he's like, okay, it's still going to count even if we pretend to swim through the water.
it it's the line of the movie to me is I forget the exact words. Anything's real if you imagine it.
Yeah, he says if you believe something up hard enough, it's true. It's like,
Um,
okay.
it's like he's trying to give like a TV Christmas special speech to this kid.
Yeah.
Like it's almost self parody at that point.
Yeah.
Uh, and what's amazing to me about this scene, so he does swim and he is connecting with this kid, and it's a beautiful thing. And it's an odd thing where in some ways this kid this he must have been a good dad, but I think only when he was there, and maybe he was only a good dad in a superficial way, because you can be a good dad and play with your kids in that sense but also not be there for your kids emotionally,
Yeah.
or your kids are just so caught up in this affluenza that it doesn't even matter. But he tells that this kids and they fake swim across the um pool, and later he hears the kid on the diving board, and he's like, "Oh no, the kid's gonna jump in," and he goes to like quote unquote rescue him. Gets there, and the kids are like, "What are you crazy? There's no water in it,"
Yeah.
which to me is like the kid is more tethered to reality than this guy. This guy thought
Yes.
the kid would actually dive in. The kid is more mature. That's why I said earlier, like he's the youngest, least mature person
Yes.
in this
And
movie.
that's also, yeah, that's why it's the most interesting part of the movie to me. And especially because before all that, he's talking to the kid about not making the swim team, saying it's better to be the captain of your own soul and being your own man
Right.
and all
He's
this stuff.
romanticizing his own isolation because he's lonely. And
Yeah.
if you can't find anyone and you can't find a way to connect with people or get out of that, you have to romanticize your own isolation. You know, I'm an isolating guy. I love isolation, but it gets dangerous and addictive.
Sure. And I think it's also good to build up how much he talks about his kids and how much he wants to play with this kid and have the kid over and stuff. So when we do get to the end of the movie and they kind of they throw it in his face, like your daughters made fun of you, like they didn't think you were shit. It's really brutal kind of like realization and also lack of acceptance when it gets to that part of like, he even says like my kids worship me. Like that's such an odd phrase to
I'm a
say.
god to them.
Yeah.
Such an odd thing. But that shows what he wants. Like he wants to be connected, but also like he's such a fabulist and such an idealist that he has this idea of himself as a father, as an authority figure, that he's so into the role, into the societal role, that he forgets that he's not playing a role and he has to actually raise and emotionally connect with
Yeah.
his kids.
Exactly.
Which I
After
think there are people like that.
totally.
Or
So after this, he makes it to his eighth house, which is an even bigger party than he's been to. And he does his whole idyllic pool adventure spiel to another lady who's this time much older. And
it's
she's
it's
like,
it's Joan Rivers.
oh, is it?
That's Joan Rivers. I didn't
Oh,
realize
okay.
at first because she doesn't have all her plastic surgery in her
Yeah,
face.
she doesn't look like a walking handbag.
Yeah,
But I like that it kind of doesn't matter. He's just wanting to share this adventure because it's, escapism and all that.
so
She's
lonely.
fascinated by it. And just by the way he talks and in that way, like I said, the whole movie is kind of just feels very literary in that way. Not just him and the way he talks, just the whole film and how it's composed, I feel. But she's fascinated by him, but she's whisked away by someone else. And
Yeah, and I also think she's a couple drinks deep and is like, "Who is this guy? He's the only guy here wearing swim trunks."
yeah, it's
Because
the only guy there swimming, actually came to
everybody
swim.
has these pools, but nobody's using them because the pools are a status symbol.
Yes.
They're all about the economic value of the pool, about the resale value, about having parties around the pool so you can talk
Yes.
about things and have your conspicuous consumption without actually living and engaging in the pool.
This
God,
guy may
which
be
is why I hate it when people don't swim at the beach.
Yeah, this guy might be delusional, but he's a hero in this one moment for swimming in this pool that no one else is swimming at a pool party.
But yeah, it's pretty wild. It almost feels like something I would do.
It's
I've been at a party. I've been the one of the only people in the hot tub before. Like
fuck
everybody.
it. Well, you invite me to a fucking pool party, I'm gonna fucking swim. Like,
Yeah.
I'll be
Out of
damned if I
spite.
don't.
Out of spite if nobody else is swimming.
What are we gonna stand around, dude? Like,
I'll
we can
show up
stand-
there in my Borat Speedo and just stare at you aggressively as I doggy paddle.
Thankfully, we're not friends with a bunch of stuffy socialites.
No,
So,
I could be friends with a few more rich people. I disagree.
Oh, okay. Well,
Be fine. I could just bum off them like these guys because I don't have a pool this summer to swim in.
this is where it starts to break apart big time because he sees a hot dog wagon that he used to have that was special to him that he cannot fathom that his wife sold, and he's willing to offer them like any money he can. He offers them $100, which they scoff at. Like, what are you talking about, $100? Oh, you'll send me a check, huh? And this time he straight up gets kicked out. He doesn't wander out. He doesn't he just gets kicked out this time. And so
Call him a
now,
gate crasher, which is
yeah,
kind of an old timey phrase. But
yeah.
no, he's just crashing these people parties, showing up muddy. I mean, just imagine you're these party goers. You're just chilling, having cocktails, talking to pretty ladies, and then Burt Lancaster in really tight swimming trunks with his dick root visible stumbles up, limps up, dirty, muddy feet, bloody feet, takes a drink, dives in the pool when nobody else. It's deranged. It's absolutely deranged
To us, but also it kind of shows that like the first half of this movie, it's just how things were. And it's like, oh, it's our neighbor. He showed up. No big deal. Come have a drink. Let's hang out. Let's just see where the night takes us. It's just like,
because those were his distant neighbors. He starts far away.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he gets closer to where he used to live, neighbors that he saw more often, and they're like, this fucking guy, Jesus Christ.
That's a good point. But
instead of the guy you saw once a month, it's a guy you saw multiple times a week, and you're like, dude, I'm sick.
I will say, like, I do like the fantasy idea of like just living in a society, a suburban world where I could just show up at someone's house and they're like, yeah, come in for drinks.
Yeah,
let's
but that
have
means
a party.
people show up at your house.
Well, if I had a nice ass house and I didn't have that many responsibilities, then fuck it. Fuck it. Y'all want to come over for drinks? Come on over. I don't give a fuck. Let's chill. Let's throw a party.
People have stacked.
That's just kind of like when we did another swimming pool movie, the swimming pool.
Yeah, this is very similar. We didn't even bring that up. That's another movie we covered. That's the Mediterranean version of this.
That's one of our biggest episodes. Go check that out if you haven't. But like, it's the same kind of thing. They are staying at this French chateau. It's not even theirs, and then they have, on a whim, a big party with a bunch of French beatniks. But it's a good time. It's casual. Oh, let's just have these people over. It's very 60s lifestyle. It's interesting from an outsider's perspective. But I don't know. That it's definitely something they wanted to comment on, at least.
Yeah, I was thinking the difference is like these people are like, oh, I remember. I still think about it. There's a line in the swimming pool where he's like, yeah, Jacques or whoever, he only gets a month off this summer. It's like, what do you? I'm like, okay, Europeans. While in this movie, they're all about all they talk about is work and buying stuff. It's so goddamn American. God, and we're seeing like all of this metastasize in this election, which I'm not going to talk about, but I'm so stressed out. I may move back to Spain. I don't know.
You have the wife who's excited to tell him about all the stuff they put into their pool to make it like the best it can be. And then
she said 99.99.99.
I know
that's not how decimals work.
I know, yeah.
Women and math, am I right?
Well, the point is that the husband comes up and then is excited to repeat the exact same stuff that she did, and even repeats the 0.99 part, which is like, okay, are these people too stupid to understand what that means? Did they get lied to by some guy selling them a pool?
Bro, it's just upper middle management and who doesn't understand the engineers who are talking to the engineers like, why can't you do this faster? And then they show them the math and he's like, what are you, a nerd? Do it faster. There ain't a dollar sign in those numbers. I don't get it, man. I guess. I don't know. I mean, okay, so it sounds like a nice pool though. She was saying that she was selling me on the pool a little bit. I'm like, man,
totally. But so the ninth house he gets to, it's the woman we've realized he had an old relationship with,
the actress.
And once again, he's like bringing up like when we did this at this and like in the snow, and she's like, I haven't been to that particular area in like 3 years at least. Like, what are you talking about? And she's like, I've never even been to your house.
I haven't been to Toronto in 3 years. I've never been to your house. He's like, what was that? Boston? Was it? He just starts making.
I don't know, but
for all I know, it was other affairs he had.
She's the one who actually starts dropping in your face lines about like, oh, your idyllic all American life and stuff like that. And
yeah, mentions the war, which we already talked about.
Yeah, and
the melodrama really picks up in that scene.
Yeah,
and it doesn't stop. And the score does a lot of work in this movie. And there's an interesting thing. The score is blaring and melodramatic from the opening credits, which is just shots of the countryside, the hillsides and stuff, which I thought was a bit disconcordant.
That's what I thought too. I was like, what did I? Is this the right movie? What is this?
Right. I'm like, okay, so why? Like, we have all this idyllic imagery, yet this melodramatic score. What is going on? And it was at this point in the movie when when it really hit emotionally, because it had been hinted at and like talked about, and it was under the surface. But in this scene where it really rises above the surface, that's a swimming pun. That the score really starts blaring, the melodrama's going. It's this old school kind of pre-Brando acting where like it's still theatrical a little bit, and I don't hate it. It's still good. I think Burt Lancaster is great in this movie. I think he's well cast. His shivering sometimes looks a little fake, but it's hard to fake shiver. I tried it.
That is interesting. He starts getting colder and colder.
Yeah, he's like that. Sun has no warmth in it, which is depressing. And like that's how out of touch he is. Also, yeah, he's like, yeah, I'm tired. I'm like, yeah, you've walked like 6 miles and swam like 8 laps, and you're like in your 50s, and you're barefoot the whole time.
And he refuses to be driven home. He's like, no, I have to swim at home. It has to happen. It's like, okay.
It's amazing how just hyper fixated, as the kids would say today, he is on this.
And like, every time he talks to people, his wife seems to come up. This is the time where like you learn the most about her, and that like
she had the money,
and that this lady was the side piece, and that he wasn't really happy with his wife, and like you learn that she resents him because of the way he treated her, and like he broke up with her publicly in a certain spot because he didn't want her to throw a fit, and just like all this stuff. It's like, ugh, okay, this guy's he's kind of he's got some weird baggage. And then we learn that like he mentions like, oh, my wife's done a lot for this town, and she's like, yeah, but like she didn't do much good at home though, did she? And it's like, damn.
Yeah, she's brutal in the way. Also, he does the really common mistake guys do of asking about exes. He was like, how good is he in bed? Scale of 1 to 10.
Scale of 1 to 10. I was like, damn, dude.
Like, first of all, how do you even rate that? Unless you're talking about inches. But 11. Also, dude, just don't ask that. There's no good answer. Best case scenario, she lies. Yeah, dude, I've never asked that.
It's like, okay, you've gotten this far, just accept the ride home. Like, you had a big fight. Obviously, she cares about his well-being enough that she wants to take him home. She can see that he's not fully well, but he's like, nope, fuck it. And it's just breaking down so hard at this point. And just to fulfill his dumb little fantasy, he's now having to cross a highway full of insane amount of cars just to fulfill his little adventure. And he's like almost getting hit. And then he's like, well, I have to swim in this public pool. He doesn't have 50 cents. And the guy's giving him grief. And then people show up and he asks them for 50 cents and to get in the pool. And it's this whole thing. And then he gets into the pool. And it's the most overcrowded nightmare of a pool ever. And he
worst. It's that kind of pool where you roll up to with your mom or whoever's taking you in the neighborhood kids, and you see it, and then everybody looks at each other like, do we want to do this?
No.
Or do we just want to go somewhere else and do something else? Which I wouldn't want to.
But that isn't like
the soap. I can't get over the soap. This is before body wash was invented, or people would waste it. You're just rubbing other people's pubes on your feet. Like, that's disgusting. Or other people's feet on your armpits.
Sensory nightmare.
I want to go back to the score real quick because I was looking at this. The composer was Marvin Hamlish, who, I mean, he's done stage and screen. This was his first film score. But he's also done a lot of Woody Allen films. He did work on The Sting, the Best Picture winner. other stuff. The Informant, Steven Soderbergh, Matt Damon. And he won a PGOT, which is the EGOT, Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony, and Pulitzer. He's one of 2 people to win that. And this was his first movie he composed. So, big name, this really kicked off his career. And apparently was Burt Lancaster said this was the favorite movie he's done and the best movie he's done. Just a little extra trivia for you.
Yeah.
But they're at this absolute nightmare of a pool.
And it's like
there's gotta be so much mono, it's called duo.
He's not even in like the nice neighborhoods anymore. He's at the public pool with the rest of the
with the plebeians,
people.
with the middle class instead of the upper middle class.
Yeah.
That's because he crossed the highway. That was him going back to reality.
Yeah.
Oh, there goes gravity.
And once he goes back to reality, he makes it to the end of this nightmare of a pool. That's where like his friends like really just give it to him straight. Like, you owe us all these different bills.
Yeah. And your wife couldn't keep her spending in check. She had to get French strawberries instead of American.
Yeah.
It seems like, and that's another rich person thing of I see the rich person things and I'm like, I can't imagine spending money on some of this stuff. I don't know. And that's just because
spending $20 on an Erewhon smoothie just because you live in LA. Yeah, good one.
Yeah, it's
but
better be a good ass smoothie.
And he's still hanging on because he's like,
but even his wife, what I was getting at though, like even his wife, he married somebody and they're all like this. They're all living this sort of fantasy life where like they're attaching value to things that don't actually have that value, that either have an economic value, but it's not the economic value. It's the social value. It's the social value of being able to get French strawberries because Parisian cuisine. It's so different. A strawberries, it comes from dirt. They're all kind of the fucking same. I don't know. Maybe they're a bit different. I think I've only had American strawberry. I'm not really a strawberry guy. I'll be honest. I'm not a connoisseur. But it shows like he married kind of the perfect person for him in a way because they're both that out of touch,
Yeah.
And she extended beyond her means because she's also out of touch with her own reality and owes money to all these shops. I guess these are like grocers or suppliers of different goods. It doesn't say exactly what their jobs are. This kind of keeping in line with short story writing and John Cheever. This is good at what I think it's associated with Hemingway, the sort of iceberg theory of narrative where you show the top 10% and the other 90% is under the surface. And this scene's a great example of that. It just gives you just enough.
Yeah, but it's just like, this is it. Like, this is right before he gets back to his house. So it's all out. Like, you owe us bills. What are you talking about? Your daughters, y'all kept their names out of the papers for drunk driving, embarrassing this or that. And he's still trying to hang on because he goes in like saying like, oh, how were those seats that I got you for the World Series? He's like, oh, you mean 3 years ago? Yeah, they were fine, whatever. And that's just like so sad that he's still just hanging on to this. And then it's the idea of like, no, my daughters love me. They worship me. That he can't even fathom what they're talking about. And they're like, okay, this guy's fucked. And that the idea that his daughters would talk bad about him is like, that's it. That's like the final piece that like breaks him down to the point where
it does break him down. And I immediately got an image of his daughters just being these nasty socialites.
Yeah, gross.
Just evil versions of Mary Kate and Ashley.
So far removed from probably his wholesome image in his brain of what they were at 8 years old.
Right. Because this guy's new money. He reeks of new money.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Exactly.
In the second generation, it does have to be hard to raise like a good rich kid. Like if you're born rich and to not be a piece of shit.
But it's like we were talking about how this is like the Odyssey and stuff. After this, to get to his old house, he's literally climbing up that rock and it's like real hard and it's just kind of adds to that.
No, and he's limping more and more. He limps his way through that swimming pool. There's the great shot of the camera in the pool and people are playing around and kind of look at him like, who's this old guy?
Yeah.
And it's so melodramatic, but it works.
I know.
Because
of course it starts raining and thundering as he gets closer and closer.
They lay it on thick in this movie.
So awesome. But it's exactly what I wanted. As soon as I got what they were going for, that's exactly what I wanted out of the ending. Because when he gets to the gate and he sees that it's rusted over, it really just hits.
Yeah, it's even worse than I had imagined.
Yeah, to get back to the house. It's just completely rusted over, long forgotten. It's just like
No, it
even
looks like it
then,
got hit with V2 rockets.
I thought he would see the gate and see that it's just not been touched in years, that would be it. But he still tries to get inside, still tries to bang on the door and get inside the door. And I like that the camera goes in just to hammer it home even more. Just like, this place is desolate. Like,
There's some boxes, and I think the boxes, it had like some old tennis rackets and stuff.
yeah.
They didn't even take the tennis rackets. Tennis was not that important to them. It was
Yeah.
important to him
Yes.
that they played tennis, because that's another rich person
Status.
sport. It's not quite golf, which is, but like, I don't even know. I guess it's historically tennis was like a upper class thing. I know
Yes.
it's big in like the class systems in France, because it's not like the equipment's expensive. You can get a racket for $20 and some balls. But there's this air about it that it's like a rich person sport.
Yeah.
And so he probably is one of these parents who like push their kids into playing sports, and then they were like, I don't want to do this anymore. I never liked tennis. There's even I forget his name. There's some European tennis player who's gone on record being like, I kind of hate tennis, and I was a pro, and my dad just forced me to play tennis.
Wow.
Yeah. And then it cuts very quickly to credits. Like, I mean, it's overlay on the screen, but it's kind of like, and then the credits, it very abruptly. There are a few weird, jarring cuts in this movie, I noticed. Not enough to ruin it.
I don't know. No, it's fine to me. This is the perfect ending for me. I think this movie is incredible.
No, I definitely enjoyed it.
I was, yeah, it went far beyond what I was hoping when it comes to substance. But
yeah, me too. I didn't know what to expect from this movie and how dark it would get. I always appreciate it when a movie of this era can get dark. When anything in Technicolor that can actually have some substance is a bonus for me.
Well, it's easy to comment on the way things used to be now from having a perspective of years, but like to be in the moment of that era, of that kind of subculture, and being able to comment on it, I think is always really impressive and really cool.
Which is, I mean, and that's why John Cheever is still taught, because he was able to do it. His social realism, there's a bit of magic realism in there with the radio thing, and I've only read a couple of the stories. I'm not a huge fan of the guy, part of it because it is like stuffy old waspy shit, but I mean, that was part of his brilliance. This is social observations and his willingness to break down this American dream bullshit.
Totally.
Yeah. Any more thoughts on this movie?
I think this is one of the few movies where like there were reshoots that actually made the movie better.
Oh, what did they reshoot?
They were missing some transition scenes by the time they finished shooting, and the producer wasn't really happy with a few things, so he fired the director and got Sidney Pollack to do the reshoots, of all people. The only film of his I've seen is 3 Days of the Condor, which is a good movie. But they just apparently he kind of like sexually assaulted the babysitter at first, and they toned it down. And
That's good.
I think it's the right level of just like realism of like him trying to like put his hand, talk to her and stuff, and
then like kind of lean in for a kiss, because he doesn't strike me as a creep. He's an
it's too far. And just like they padded some stuff out and just added a few things here and there, but nothing like crazy. And I think they swapped out a few actors in certain scenes, but because I know, yeah. Anyway, that about wraps up things for The Swimmer, 1968, I believe. Really enjoyed this one. Next week, we're going to be doing a 3-hour experimental epic. Celine and Julie go boating, so look forward to that. Yeah, thanks for watching. I have a book for sale that I wrote. You can check that out below. We have a tie-in film. You can check that out. Scott does comedy if you're in the area.
I do comedy at Scott K Comedy. On the 29th, I will be defending my title as the roast champion of Little Rock You can check me out.
Rufio.
You can check me out on the Partially Cooked podcast. It's on YouTube. It's also on Spotify and wherever you find podcasts. I discuss. We'll see. We'll see if I maintain my title. I'm going against some heavy hitters, but drop a line, come out.
We also this is just a summer themed version of The Harbor. So if you want other summer themed episodes, we have plenty more summer series episodes. Go check those out. We got 150 videos on this channel. Plenty to put on while you're chilling this summer. So thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week.